probably isn't their own idea, but it's guiding them in some way or other.
From their point of view, they're very practical. Because,
yes.
well, imagine that. Imagine somebody so empty-headed as Putin is. Somebody so cynical that the biggest value that he has is very materialistic, like a castle, a yacht, a very beautiful concubine, or something like that. So for the person like that, they have no idea what freedom is. They have no idea how things are getting done. They don't understand that that they have to be thankful to the fact that the United States is somewhere there, created these conditions when people become so creative that they invent computers, they invent a cure for cancer, and then these bastards on the other side of the world, they're using it, and they don't realize why it is happening. They just want to consume it, and then from their practical point of view, they just think about it as, well, we're gonna conquer everything, and we're gonna get more of material value. But basically, they will destroy it.
Right, and that's how you kill the goose that laid the golden egg.
That's exactly the right thing you just said. Yeah, that's how you kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
Because the Chinese and the Russian leaders, people like Putin, people like Medvedev, I believe, this is my belief from studying them and watching them for more than 20 years, my belief is the people in the Kremlin, maybe not all of them, but enough of them that matters, that guides policy, it's in their blood, it's cultural to the institution. It's the same in Beijing as in Moscow. They want to destroy America. They want America on its knees. And they think then things will be good for them. They think then they will have arrived finally, that they can finally enjoy their ill-gotten gains. That's what they think, basically.
Yeah,
so if you want to boil their ideology and everything they think down to one thing, that's what it is.
There is this guy in Moscow. His name is Bilkovsky, and he's considered to be the prominent politologist in Russia. And he repeats over and over that the Putin had from the rulers of Russia, from this clans, from these gangs of milliardaires and gangsters and whoever makes money on oil and all these people. Basically, the center of it is the Yeltsin advanced family. Yeltsin, the clan of Yeltsin and whatever guys are. So Putin was getting a task number of tasks from them. So one of them was to legitimize their presence at the West. Basically, to negotiate with the West the fact that the rulers of Russia will have an open door policy to the West. They will be able to live in the West, invest in the West, acquire property in the West, and this is what they wanted. But the other tasks were to get rid of the social support system for the Russians, so the state will not be spending as much money as they used to. And the other thing was, I don't know what other tasks, what other real task was, but the task of legitimizing their presence in the West didn't work out. West didn't accept them. There's still, a lot of problems of them being not accepted in the West, and there are lots of voices in the West demanding that they were put to justice. All these Putins, Yeltsins, Medvedevs, whoever ripped off the Russian people of the oil, of the real estate, everything, what you were saying before. Any project Westerner starts ends up of being hijacked by the KGB. They build a church and then they confiscate it from them. They build a business, like in Ukraine it happens. There's a nice example from the city of Kharkov. Some Vietnamese people created a very prosperous and nice running business that was manufacturing a pasta, macaroni kind of thing. So they were very successful, and then somebody decided to take it away from them. And it was done in a very simple way. The visas, their visas ended, and they were never renewed. So the people just had to leave.
The Russians are doing the same thing to British Petroleum.
Interesting.
British Petroleum invested in a big time in the Russian oil industry and owned a percentage, and they didn't like them to have any real interest in their business, so they just started getting rid of all the visas for the BP British Petroleum employees, and now British Petroleum is having to leave Russia, but they of course they leave their money behind. Their people have to go home, and it's the exact same technique.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
a major oil company, major Western oil company.
yes, yeah. It's exactly like in 1917, even though it's
well. There's a book called A Red Carpet that goes into what happened to the capitalists who invested in Russia in the 20s during the new economic policy of Lenin. They did the same thing under NEP in the 1920s. Russia opened up and said, we're not following communist ideology anymore. Communism we don't believe in it anymore. It's dead. The ideology is dead in Russia.
Yeah.
Come in with your dollars, invest. They had the Change of Signpost movement. They had the Monarchist Alliance of Central Russia and the Trust. Of course, these were fronts run by the secret police, run by Felix Dzerzhinsky. And, of course, all the people that invested money into this, including people like Avril Harriman and the Rockefellers, they lost their money. They lost the money they invested in Russia, in Soviet Russia, in the 1920s. And now it's being repeated. It's as if here 70 years later, 80 years later, nobody has learned anything from the past.
Well, you need to possess a certain willpower to. First, you have to really face what is happening. Face what you understand. A lot of people understand it, but well, they just put it in the back of their minds. Unless like Bezmenov is saying, they will even if you take them to the concentration camp and show the skulls of millions of victims, they will not get it until a military boot will kick them in their behind, or they were gonna be sent to Alaska to work in the slave labor camps. Then they will get it.
Then they will get it. That's right. People do not conceive totalitarianism. It was like the Holocaust denial.
Exactly.
And people say, well, didn't the Germans know they were killing all those Jews? Well, there's this mechanism of denial. People think about how horrible it is and think, well, something bad happening, but it's not something that bad. I mean, nobody does that. That's crazy. Well, it turns out that totalitarianism, this topsy-turvy world that's created by it, whatever people believe or whatever they think, it is real. It does exist. It kills tens, if not hundreds of millions of people. It has killed, I think, 100 million people in the 20th century, and it's going to kill, I think, more than 1 billion people in the 21st century, if you want to be honest. If I'm to be honest.
That's very interesting. Well, it's a scary thought, but I would, if I may ask you to elaborate on that, how you see this happening and why it is needed to happen.
Well, it's a very simple calculation, and of course I wrote a book and I've written many articles that have studied for years, and come to this conclusion. But I came to this thinking early on, and I've rehashed it in my mind to see if there's any errors in it and to see if history is unfolding in this way, and it is. Let's say we simplify and say, of course, it's simplification to say there's West and there's East. There's this former Soviet space and the Western space, or as Andrei Navrazov likes to say, there's the zone of militarism and then there's civilization.
Right.
What I find is that in the West, they believe that power is money. In the East, they like money fine enough, but power is really guns. And you see this in Russia by the number of businessmen who are gunned down every year. They're not beaten fair and square in business deals.
Absolutely,
they're gunned down.
They're gunned down. Like what they do to the BP. It's the same kind of thing. It's violence. You're not beating them in competition. You just exile them out of the country.
Yeah, because if you stay in a country without your visa, you get guns pointed at you and you get forcibly exported from taken out of the country. So it really does amount to force versus this other system, which is agreement. and freedom, and the two worlds are following a different path, and they don't recognize the value in each other. Like you said, the totalitarians, they know the West creates things, but they don't see that as fundamental. They don't understand. They think things will still be created
Yeah.
even if they destroy the West. The West doesn't see the full evil of totalitarianism. Doesn't see that it's every time it makes a deal with it,
Yeah,
it
because
just
it lives in a
allows it to
different
continue.
dimension. Yes.
Yeah, and these two things are colliding in the sense that both have different expectations for the future and reality.
Hmm.
Both are set on different courses. Both are bound to misunderstand each other, and both are headed for a master misunderstanding. A master misunderstanding involving weapons of mass destruction, particularly when the West is afraid of these weapons, doesn't really know what to do with them. We talked earlier about communists without bomb
Hmm.
shelters. Can't really conceive of a world that lives in fear of them. Can't really come to terms with them. Where the East, believing in violence, believing in guns, and the bomb is just the ultimate gun,
Hmm.
is going to end up. We're going to end up in a situation where they're going to be used. Weapons of
Yeah.
mass destruction are going to be used either through intermediaries like terrorists, or directly, or a combination, I think, of both. And that once you cross a certain threshold where you enter into reforming the entire planet, or reformatting or rebooting the planet with weapons of mass destruction, you end up with more people even dying of starvation and economic collapse than dying of the actual direct use of the weapons. You have a reversion to the Dark Ages, to a medieval kind of situation. You have complete change of mentality in the West, and I believe that you have suddenly the East cut off from its apron strings, which it's totalitarianism, communism in Russia and China have both only been able to survive by hoodwinking the West, by sort of parasiting,
Hmm.
stealing from the West certain vital things that it is needed. It might not even be that much of a volume of material, but certain things were absolutely essential. And once you have this disconnect, you have a kind of universal collapse take place, and a reformatting of the entire world. It's tragic. We should hope it does not happen, but I see this is occurring